Well, hello, everybody. The week is winding down, and we thought we'd end off the week on a high because, as you can see, I'm joined by the one and only Alan Committie, who is in lockdown on his own. So he's actually asked to do this every day, right the way through to the end of lockdown, just for some kind of entertainment. But Alan, that's a joke, by the way. Welcome to Locked Down Discs. How's things going?
Man, what can I tell you, Neil? First of all, thanks for the asking of it, and secondly, this is the first person I've spoken to in days. I've been entertaining the squirrels in my garden. I'm here in Cape Town. I'm lucky. I'm grateful for the squirrels. I'll take whatever audience I can get at this point. So the fact that you and I can now talk over the next couple of minutes is beyond exciting.
Well, I've been saying to all my guests, all my castaways on the lockdown disc, that nobody saw this coming. I suspect if you or I or anybody had told us what would likely be happening in 2020, we would have put them in a straitjacket. But it is what it is, and human beings adjusting. I must say, having spoken to a lot of folks, I think people are generally positive about the way we've been led in the country, and also that by and large, most people following advice, social distancing, and staying in lockdown, which is important.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right. We're going to have to prepare for some kind of new normal, whatever that shape might take. You and I share something in that we both are performers. We've done a lot of work on stage together as MCs. That's going to be a very different future for us, I suspect, in whatever way. It might be that we do more digital interaction with clients. But of course, you're also connected to the other great passion in my life, which is sport. And no doubt you're also feeling it's just ridiculous to be without the kind of adrenaline and excitement and camaraderie and collegiality of a sports event that you can either watch or listen to. And that's also going to be very interesting in the coming months.
Yeah, who knows? We're all guessing a little bit. I suppose that some sporting events will return, but probably initially not without the fans. It's interesting. Nobody really knows. But anyway, welcome to Lockdown Disc. For those who might be tuning in for the first time because they said, oh, Alan's doing it, so I'm going to watch. We had a lot of people watching Terry Payne's thing, but of course there's
he's still alive.
He is, and there's a hiccup now with the signal at the old age home. So that's cut his viewership down basically in its totality, in its total. So, yes, so it is, of course, it's built around the old Desert Island Disc. The only difference is that poor Alan and all my guests, instead of having 8 songs, only have 5, which is not easy. They have 5 songs to take into lockdown. But I've thrown in 2 movies and a book. And, of course, Alan and all our guests are entitled to their opinion, and they will back it up and tell us why. So, Alan, let's get straight into it. What was the first song, in no particular order, unless you have it, that you're taking into lockdown?
Good. And we also just need to add the caveat, which I'm sure all your other guests have as well, that these lists would change probably later this afternoon and certainly by tomorrow. It's how you feel on any one day. I'm assuming that I'm locked down on the island right now. You've just put a microphone in my face and said, what songs do you want for now?
Correct.
And I would start with a little callback to my dad, who was a huge Elvis Presley fan. And if I'm honest with you, in my early years, kind of right up till probably about 15, 16, I had no idea why. I couldn't understand it. It seemed strange. He would have a couple of brandies and cokes, and then late at night, often when I was sleeping, I would hear him sing atonally with his speakers on. He'd have headphones on his head, and he'd be singing along to Elvis Presley, murdering the song in the most appalling ways. And my mother shouting from the bedroom, "Shut up, Trevor!" That was kind of an early childhood memory. But as I kind of formed a stronger and stronger relationship with him in my late teens and early 20s, he introduced me to all of the kind of live concerts. He had a lot of them on video back when we still had VHSs, and of course the LPs. And it suddenly dawned on me how brilliant Elvis Presley was as a performer. Of course he had an extraordinary voice. Of course he had the most charismatic presence and entertained people across the world, but he was just the most amazing concert performer. And if you go back and watch any footage, and you can see a lot of stuff on YouTube, you will see the kind of basis of so many performers who came after him, how he held a crowd, how he was completely natural on stage, how he would talk about when he forgot words on stage. And so the song I've chosen to answer very longly is the song he would end every concert with. He would travel across the States when he was touring internally across America, and every concert he would end with Can't Help Falling in Love with You. And of course, UB40 did a great cover of it years later, which I also like. But the original Elvis Presley with those amazing low tones that he has and the passion he brought to the song. And of course, this was the song. As he finished the song, they would play a kind of reprise of the chorus, and he would walk off stage and the curtains would drop. And famously, in every concert, as the final bars were played, they would say, Elvis has left the building. And he would go straight off the stage into a limo. The limo would take him to an airport, and he would fly to the next evening's performance in another state. He would be halfway to the airport by the time the song was finished. It was that timed. And it's a lovely notion that he, as much as he loved performing, he never really stayed and connected with the audience in any kind of way after the show.
And to bring it back home to you, not dissimilar to what happens to you when you perform at the theatre on the Bay.
I'm out of there sometimes before my final joke. I'll let the audience create the final punchline, and I'm halfway home to Takai.
Brilliant. He has, he is memorable, and I have to tell you that Terry Payne's first choice, by the way, was an Elvis Presley song. So maybe we're not that far off Terry. So,
wow. Okay, so fair enough.
Terry took Elvis with him as well, as many I suspect will, because he had an iconic voice and, as you say, a great performer. Yeah. Let's play a little bit of Can't Help Falling in Love. Oh, I'm getting goose flesh.
He's got an amazing voice.
He's going down the back stairs right now.
That's right. The car is revving quietly on the back. I got to tell you, while that's playing, is that I did, when I was younger, I played, I was a follow spotter at a Sting concert in Cape Town. And I saw him do the same thing. I was on the truss above the stage. So I was looking down, and as he finished, they ended with a police medley. And as the medley finished, he got a huge applause from the audience. And they then played, the band on stage continued to play. And he walked across the stage. Of course, I was privy to watching him. Through the curtains, I could see on the other side of the curtains, he got into a car and drove off the stage. And the audience was still applauding. He was gone by the time they had even got close to calling for an encore. So it's quite interesting to watch those backstage shenanigans.
Yeah, absolutely. So Elvis Presley, Can't Help Falling in Love. Just to throw my own little 2 cents worth in, I probably would end up taking my own Elvis. It is such a tough decision, just even on that as an artist, because I'm a big fan of Suspicious Minds. In the Ghetto, there's so many. So
brilliant.
You could take one of any there. Okay, so Elvis it is. He hasn't left the building. Alan hasn't anyway. What is the second song now? What are you going for that?
Okay, we're going to go to the final countdown, very anthemic. Of course, originally performed by the band Europe. It's a nice song to take us into the final countdown of a world gone mad. But I've actually gone for a cover of the song, and it's by a group that I've grown to love a lot over the last couple of years called Postmodern Jukebox. And essentially what they do is they take, they make covers of songs, but they then change the arrangement of it almost sometimes unrecognizably, and change its style. So for example, they have taken a Spice Girls number and made it a 1930s doo-wah girls arrangement of it. And it's brilliant. So what they've done with Final Countdown is there's a brilliant sax kind of solo to it, which is just fantastic to listen to, but still harkens back to the original song and has all of the feels that you would have with that original song.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wasn't 100% convinced that I got the right version, because when I went looking for it, there was a number of different ones. There was one live in Italy and so forth, and eventually there was a young man dressed as a woman who was playing, and I suspect that is it. But it's very entertaining. The video is probably more entertaining than the song, although exactly as you said, the first couple of bars I thought, hang on, is this the final countdown? So it is different, and I'm going to play it now for the folks at home. So it's they're called, so it's a final countdown, but the song is Jukebox. What is it?
Postmodern Jukebox. Go and look them up. You'll find them on Apple Music, or I'm sure you'll find some stuff on YouTube. And there's a number of musicians. They are absolutely brilliant. They're essentially jazz musicians, and so they kind of add jazz arrangements to these numbers. But really entertaining, and it's quite fun sometimes just to listen to an album and try and recognize the original song.
I saw a lot of it, so I'm pleased that I think I've got the right one or something akin to it. So let's have a listen. This is the final countdown as you've never heard it before.
We're leaving together, but still it's farewell. And maybe we'll come back
To Earth Who Can Tell.
Earth who can tell. I guess there is no one to blame. We're leaving ground. Will things ever be the same again?
And here comes the...
It's the final countdown.
Isn't that great? I think one of the pleasures
Very
of,
different.
Postmodern jukebox is that, yeah, I think one of the pleasures of that band is that you suddenly start listening to the lyrics often in songs that you might not have heard because you either too well, or in fact that the arrangement, especially in kind of pop songs, is such that you're really just listening to the melody. And here it gives it a different focus and attention.
It's interesting what you say there, because when the first week of lockdown disc, so I think you're my fifth or sixth guest, I can't remember, I've lost count already, but the one trend that does come through, well, there's two trends. One is that people are choosing a lot of lyrics and artists to take because, not so much of the sound, but also because of the lyrics of the chosen song. And the other thing is that people have all suggested on this show that the older you get in life, that you frequently go back to some of your old music, but you find new meaning to it, because when you were younger you didn't quite grasp what the song meant. I mean, we've had, I think, 3 of my guests all went for Bob Marley, and they're all saying that they probably realized later on how politically active he was. I mean, even someone like Pommy and Shimmy who was speaking about it. So that's the great thing about music, is that you can revisit it and probably it means something to you differently the second or third time round.
Absolutely, and that layered nature of any art form, but particularly music, I think is what draws us back to it. And as you say, sometimes you're listening because the melody or the rhythm line or something is carrying you, but often it's the entrance, it's the message behind it or the content behind it. And it often is, you associate music so strongly with moments in your life, and it can take you right back to a specific time. So of course it carries great resonance there, emotional resonance as well.
Yeah, and similar with us, I know that sometimes some of our jokes take 4 or 5 times hearing them before you actually realize that perhaps there's a dash of humor in them.
That's right.
Right, let's break. As I said, we're going to do the 2, so we've done the 2 songs. What about your first movie? You get to take a movie into lockdown.
Now, I'm a movie buff. I love my movies, and I have 3 friends, and we do the top 10 lists often. We'll do them 4 or 5 times a year, and they always change. So this was almost impossible. So I thought the way to make it easier is, because people I would imagine on this platform know me mostly as a comedian, I will go for some of my top comedy movies. At least that narrows it down. I have amazing movies. I would have to, on any other list, put The Godfather in somewhere nice and high, but we're not going to talk about those serious films. We're going to talk, in my first choice, a movie that introduced me to the genius that is Martin Short, Chevy Chase, and Steve Martin. Possibly 3 of the funniest gentlemen I've ever encountered, and I've been big fans of all of theirs over the years. And still with Martin Short, I follow him on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. I read everything he produces. And the movie, of course, is the absolutely brilliant The Three Amigos. Now, on first visit to The Three Amigos, you might see it as a very slight piece of froth that has no relevance to an audience. But in fact, you're missing the point entirely. This is a masterpiece. This is a brilliant exploration of the triple act. Forget the double act, the triple act. 3 comedy brains in very different styles coming together with a fantastically funny, fast-paced script. And I watched it about a year ago, again, for the first time in ages, and I would argue that it hasn't dated. It's still very, very funny. So The Three Amigos is choice number 1.
Okay, well, we'll come back to choice number 2. It's again interesting, again another theme that we've touched on again, that I know, Terry's two movies were, trying to remember, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Casablanca.
Excellent.
And what happened straight away is I took them, I have them in my collection, and I haven't seen them for 10, 20 years. So I took them out in order to rewatch them. So this is part of why we're doing this, because I suspect a lot of people will be saying, Three Amigos, if I haven't watched it, I'm going to watch it. And even if I have watched it, yes, I want to watch it again. So I'll be doing exactly that. So Three Amigos.
And it's got the famous line of Martin Short and Chevy Chase standing outside a saloon in Mexico, and they look up and an old biplane flies over. And Martin Short says, that's a mail plane. And he says, oh, how do you know? He says, it's got two little balls at the bottom of it. And I mean, if that isn't just a great comedy line, I don't know.
Brilliant. Okay, right. Let's go back to our music. So we've had Elvis and we've had an interesting rendition of the Final Countdown. Where do you take us to now, Alan?
Well, I'm going to reference to something I just said earlier, which is that music, of course, takes us back to very specific moments in our life. And so this isn't necessarily a great song. In fact, I would argue it isn't. But it is the very first LP that I ever bought for myself. And I was 11 years old. And it was Ray Parker Jr.'s Ghostbusters, the movie theme. And it was on the little 33-inch LP. And I was so excited. And I've still got it. I still have that of the many LPs that have kind of been discarded and lost over the years. I still have that. And it brings me great pleasure. I don't have anything to play it on anymore, sadly. But I did listen to the song this morning again, and it takes me right back to the excitement of that movie, which was brilliant and might go into one of my lists as a kind of pop cultural touch point in the 80s. Ghostbusters, with again some brilliant comedy actors.
Chevy Chase again.
Chevy, of course, and Bill, Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray. And but of course, the song in itself is kind of fun and very 80s with lots of synthesized tracks underneath, and I think worth a listen and worth keeping.
He had a great voice, probably an underrated voice, Ray Parker, because you hear it had a real depth to it. And very pleasant on the ear. So I'm not surprised. I don't know about saying it's not a great song, and its own maybe the content of it, but it certainly stood the test of time. So
it stood the test of time. You're right.
Let's go back and listen. So there's a bit of ghostly ghouls up first, isn't there? Here we go. Before the beat hits us. Here we go. Who are you gonna call? Now that I hear it, actually, he had quite a, I wouldn't say what it was almost a sexual tone to it. Who you going to call? I mean, he had that kind of crooning going on.
Did he do many other big numbers? I'm trying to think. He wasn't a one-hit wonder, but he certainly didn't. I mean, that was his kind of calling card, wasn't it? Literally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'd have to Google him.
I do wonder about Ray Parker Sr., who he was, because the fact that he had to call himself Ray Parker Jr. suggests that there was some kind of weight and importance to the father, but we may never know.
Well, this is
why I've Googled that.
This is why with my kids, I never went down that route, because I felt, you get like golfers like Davis Love III. So now you've got to go back to Davis Love, and then Davis Love 1, 2, 3. I mean, and Davis Love the seventh must be under enormous pressure. So I've never gone down that route at all. So Ray Parker, Ghostbusters, and as you say, a great movie. Okay, let's do the book now. What about the book? Because a lot of my guests have struggled with books.
Okay, so I'm a voracious reader, and I'm going to actually pull this around here, and I'm going to show you. I don't know if I can turn the video around. So what I'm going to do is just show you. This is next to my bed. I have always anything. Can you see that? Yeah, I have anything between 8 to 10 books next to my bedside, and I'm one of those people who dips into books. I'm a huge biography reader, but I read all kinds of stuff. And so my list of books, I have thousands of books in this house. But again, I've decided to go a little bit eclectic, a little bit left field. And I thought, well, what are some of the books that had an early impression on me? I read Lord of the Rings when I was very young. I was in standard 5, and I couldn't understand it. I remember I would just jump to the dialogue, and I loved the dialogue, but pages and pages of Tolkien's ridiculous description of forests had no interest to me. Only when I revisited it maybe 15 years later, in my kind of late 20s, did I really kind of understand the brilliance of this mind, this author's mind, and of course of that world. And we've seen that in the subsequently in Peter Jackson's movies. So was it Lord of the Rings that I would touch on? What about Watership Down? One of the saddest, most profound children's books ever, you know, that involved these amazing rabbits and another fantasy world where you were drawn in as a kid and kind of felt to, or taken on this incredible journey.
And a great song came out of that as well, Alan. A great song, Art Garfunkel's Bright Eyes, which was iconic in its own time.
Yeah, so was it that? And then I thought, you know what? There is something that I would take with me on any deserted island, and it would give me great pleasure because I've reread it probably 30 or 40 times, and I would do so again countless more. And that is Asterix. Any Asterix book, but the one I've chosen out of the great canon, if you will, is Asterix and the Gladiator, which was my first Asterix book that I ever read. I'm a huge fan of this comic book series. Uderzo and Goscinny were the authors and illustrator. Both passed away in the last couple of years. And if you re-look at them, I've got the full collection. I actually rebought it. I'd lost it over the years, many of my books. And I found a full collection about 2 years ago and spent quite a lot of money on it, but it was worth it. And I've actually spent a lot of time reading, you know, many of these books. And there's just so many brilliant gags, outstanding writing. And if you remember that it's actually translated from the French, the lady who translated it has done an equally brilliant job of maintaining the high level of punnery and wit that you would find in the original French.
So now that is fascinating because I'm reading a lot of that to my 6-year-old who loves
Amazing.
it. So he loves whether it be Getafix, who of course is the druid.
Correct.
Yeah, all of them. Vital Statistics. I think he's the. Yes. Brilliant.
Dogmatics. I mean, and of course, people might know this, that in one of the books, and I forget, it might even be Asterix and the Gladiator, there is a reference, and you can Google this, to coronavirus. A character is called Coronavirus, and he's on a chariot and he's wearing a medical mask. I kid you not. And that was written 35 years ago. So there you are.
Oh, okay. Well, that's brilliant. Yeah, Asterix. I mean, that is another one that stood the test of time. So lots of options for you there to take with you as far as the books are concerned. Let's go back to another song then. Your fourth selection. We've got the Ghostbusters, we've got Elvis Presley, and we've got Final Countdown. Where are we going to now, Al?
We're going to go to, I have quite an eclectic taste in music. Often my music tastes are dictated by kind of popular references. So, for example, in one of my recent stand-up shows, I spoke about Despacito because it had taken the world by storm. I didn't necessarily like the song, but because I spent so much time with it and developed this 15-minute routine around it, in the end, it kind of becomes an earworm and it stays with you. So a lot of my songs might be very popular choices, but in order to offset that, I do like a little bit of classical music. I'm a big fan of Mozart. But then I thought, well, what's somewhere between those two things? And I thought, well, to continue and to link with our movies, any John Williams theme would be worth taking with me. And I'm a huge Superman fan, so do I go there? Do we go to Star Wars? Well, those are two outstanding and very memorable John Williams themes. But in fact, I've gone for what I think is his third best, or equally third best, and it's the theme to Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Indiana Jones theme. Now, I don't know if you grew up in the 80s and you didn't love this movie and you didn't let this piece of music give you shivers down the side of your back and up your ears and in little nooks and crannies, then I just don't think you were a proper 80s baby.
Yeah. Well, let's listen to it. I mean, you talk about John Williams, and again, he's like Elvis. You could take a whole lot. My personal one for other reasons is the one that was from The Deer Hunter. I think he did the Cavatina or whatever, which is...
Correct. Absolutely.
Let's be honest, if you took that, you probably wouldn't last long in lockdown. You'd be depressed. Because it's
correct.
So I'm glad you've gone for an upmarket one. Here's a Raiders March, as it's called.
Oh, takes you right back. I see Harrison Ford on a horse. next to a Nazi tank chasing them down.
Yeah, I mean, the genius of John Williams is that he kind of got the movies. I often wondered about that. I mean, I wonder about that when you're commissioned. Maybe we should ask Ed Jordan this when he eventually comes on the show, because he's very busy.
Very busy.
He did the music for Spud. And I wonder where the inspiration comes from. If you go to see the movie, if they allow you to have a look at some of the movie that's already been made and then write the song, or you have to write it from scratch, because certainly John Williams always gets it spot on. As you say, you can visualize Harrison Ford playing the part.
I think I've read quite a lot of interviews with him and seen one or two docies. He had a very special friendship and relationship with Steven Spielberg. And of course, a lot of these movies were directed by Steven Spielberg. And I think the thing that they shared was a passion and a kind of childlike awe for those action adventure movies, that they took themselves seriously, but actually there was also a little wink to the audience going, this is fun Saturday afternoon matinee kind of excitement, and it's not that heavy. Having said that, his score for Schindler's List, which is also not to be taken literally lightly, you don't want to be taking that on the island, is absolutely brilliant and goes right into the heart of classical music. It's a beautiful and brilliant score. So he's done everything from real poppy, what some people would argue is quite derivative, because some of his theme tunes do sound like the others, and then gone to things like, Jurassic Park, which is very much in the style of like E.T.'s and the Supermans, and then gone to Schindler's List. So his skill set is amazing, John Williams, and he still continues to compose. And I don't have the exact facts, but he has won more Academy Awards for film compositions than anybody else, and he's been nominated countless more times.
Yeah, no, incredible piece of music. And again, like all of these songs, they set you straight into triggering off memories. So the great thing about music is that it's not just the piece of music, it triggers off events in your life and moods and all of that kind of thing. I'm the same. I can have one or two songs that I tend to call Cider House Rules moments, because that movie Cider House Rules, if I hear the opening 4 bars of the song, I'm gone. I start crying. So, my sister Alison, she said, oh no, another Cider House Rules moment. He's gone.
Absolutely.
Yes, wonderful.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Brilliant.
that was number 4. So before we go to your final piece that you're taking, what about the second movie?
So another great comedy movie, but more importantly, another great comedy actor, and possibly my comedy idol, is Peter Sellers. Most famous in the 60s and 70s, early 80s. This was a man, I say most famous to me, that's when I was growing up, but of course made famous by the Goons in the 50s. And this man who had 1,000 voices, who had, when you heard him speak as himself, it just sounded so unforgettable that it was kind of bizarre that he had all these personalities within inside him. And yet he goes on to create a couple of absolutely brilliant characters, and the one that we all know is Chief Inspector Jacques Clouseau, of the Pink Panther movies. And I could have put any of the Pink Panther movies and taken it with me, because that's another set of films that I could watch over and over again. But in fact, in terms of comedy brilliance, I've gone with The Party, where he's not playing Clouseau, but he is playing a very fantastically bumbling, as was his kind of forte, and socially inept character who ends up at this very wealthy film producer's party, uninvited. And we watch him through the evening as he creates absolute mayhem at this party. And it's got some of the funniest moments ever committed to celluloid, including famously him he just starts to unroll a toilet roll, and he just watches over 2 minutes. Now, 2 minutes in film time is very, very long. And the camera is just framed up on him and it doesn't move. There's no edits. And he just watches this toilet paper unfold in front of him until it's completely empty and there's a huge mess of toilet paper around him. And he does nothing. And his stillness is what makes Peter Sellers so brilliant. If you think of the frenetic, amazing skills of like a Jim Carrey, this is the other end of it. Yeah. A man who understood how to stand still and use pause and make you laugh till you cry. The Party.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and it's got that part in the start, isn't it, where he blows up the entire set because he does his shoelace up on the exploding thing. But the one thing that I remember, and it's been a while since I watched it, but it's always stuck in me as the part where I guffawed the loudest, is when he goes for the chicken, and the chicken flies up and sits on the princess's crown. And
at the dinner table. He's
dinner
also
table.
seated on a table. It's too low, so he's always just above. It is absolutely brilliant. You see, that just makes me laugh till I want to cry. And of course, famously, Birdie Num Num, Birdie Num Num, which became a catchphrase for people who hadn't even seen the movie. It's an absolute comedy classic, and I think would be on many people's top 10 comedy film list.
Yeah, brilliant. Peter Sellers, a remarkable character, a very complex character, but what he delivered to the world, incredible. So yes, two great movies, and you've done brilliantly there, both of which I'm sure our viewers will be grabbing for if they haven't watched already, and if they have, re-watching. And so, Al, we come to the last song that you are taking, and it's another classic band and a classic voice. Tell us who it is.
Well, of course, it's Freddie Mercury and Queen. I don't think there can be any argument as to the brilliance of both him and the band. And again, there are maybe 20 to 25 songs out of their canon that you could take with you. They're all brilliant. The obvious ones are the Bohemian Rhapsodies and the Show Must Go On. Show Must Go On. There's hundreds of those songs, and of course, the movie that came out last year was fantastic and reminded us of their brilliance. The one I've gone for two. The one is Only the Good Die Young, which I just think is a very sad song, and possibly I wouldn't take it with because it might make me too emotional, but it is a very beautiful song. The other one is also sad, but it has a lyricism and an emotional power to it, which I've always loved, and that's Love of My Life. And it also speaks to his voice in kind of isolation, and you hear the brilliance of Freddie Mercury. So either one of those songs.
Well, I've downloaded the second one, which I took the liberty of because it was closer to me. Because those first two albums, that was my era. The first two albums of the Queen albums, I got a Night at the Opera and then A Day at the Races. And I think Love of My Life is on one of those. It might be on Day at the Races.
It's on Night at the
Opera. But it is beautiful. And I'm glad we got a little bit of time because it has that fantastic piano introduction before Freddie's voice entertains us. So let's listen to that.
Love of my life, you've hurt me. You've broken my heart, and now you leave me. Love of my life, can't you see? Bring it back. Don't take it away from me because you don't know what it means to me.
Unbelievable. Eh? I've got goose flesh for the second time today.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And you think about the brilliance of Queen as a group and how they took, the pop world and elevated it. Started taking elements of opera and synthesized music and choral work and harmonies, close harmonies that you wouldn't associate it with kind of 80s pop, and just created something quite phenomenal that has stood the test of time. And there's that wonderful thing on YouTube with little kids who are presented, I'm talking like 5-6-year-olds, who are asked to listen to kind of 80s and 90s pop stars. And the one that kind of scores the highest almost always is Queen, because something about the theatricality and the universality of it is, can appeal to people of all ages.
Well, Bohemian Rhapsody, which interesting was one of Julia Stewart's selections last night, musically and cinematography in those days was way before its time.
Oh, absolutely.
Like a decade before everybody else.
Absolutely. Yeah, Queen, you can't go wrong with Queen.
And the last thing, you spoke about Asterix actually having, predicting the future. They predicted the future as well, because when they sang Radio Gaga, they didn't know that Lady Gaga would be all over the radio and probably the most popular thing in the 2000s. So, or the 2010s anyway.
Exactly. And by the way, Lady Gaga, amazing. So she could easily fit on a list somewhere. She's an extraordinary. She's also got that ability to cross genres. In terms of her music styles and work that she's put out.
So I have to confess, Lady Gaga would be on my list. I actually have it here. I mean, she did a acoustic. I wouldn't say acoustic. It is acoustic as much. She just sits down at the piano and sings "Bad Romance," which is unbelievable. That's
right.
And Million Reasons, all of these great songs. And the movie, the remake. Remake of movies not normally great, but the remake that. Her and Cooper, isn't it? Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, Bradley.
Is outstanding.
Stars Born is amazing. Yeah.
Okay, Al, thank you very much. It's been very, very entertaining. But before you do go, and
right.
we've loved your selections. We've got not that long to go for the lockdown, but as you were saying, times are uncertain going forward, not 100% certain what the new norm will be, but maybe a chance for you to say to all South Africans out there and your fans to hang in there and follow instructions, stay safe. And by staying safe and staying indoors, we're going to keep all our friends and colleagues and family safe.
Absolutely. This is the only thing that keeps us sane in this mad time is the fact that we're all under the same umbrella. It's not a particularly fun umbrella, but it does mean that it's about looking after each other, and we have to do that. Be kind to each other, keep each other laughing and smiling. I'm the only thing I can do, much like you, we're kind of a bit aimless with no deadlines coming up, certainly for crowds and performances, is I'm trying to put out some content on my Facebook and social media pages. So go and see some silliness there. I put out a lot of old content from my shows, but also I've created a new COVID video in which I explain some of them.
I've seen it. It's marvelous. It is hilarious.
Yeah. And it will tell you to stay at home in the most ridiculous way. So, yeah, go and check that out. Keep laughing. Keep in contact. Phone those you haven't spoken to. The thing is, I've had a lot of contact with friends and family that I've not heard from. Some people, I've remembered why I haven't had contact with them, to be fair. But most of them, it's been really lovely to be connected with people again. So let's use this time and take a deep breath and prepare ourselves for whatever lies ahead, and who knows what that is.
Alan, that was very entertaining. I thoroughly enjoyed it, as I knew I would. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your humor. Thank you for your expertise and your choices. Stay safe, and we'll chat soon.
Cheers. Thanks, man.